Welcome to the Top 1% Book Club. We pull out actionable insights from these top self-improvement books to help you level up your life.
Awesome.
And today we're diving deep into Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky's Make Time.
Yes.
It's your guide to designing a day that really matters,
Mm.
even in our crazy busy world.
It's not about cramming more in,
Right.
but rather being intentional with your time, making sure it's aligned with your priorities and not just reacting to everyone else's demands.
Right. It's about taking back control.
Yes.
One of the first things that jumped out at me was this concept of the busy bandwagon and infinity pools.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on these from a broader perspective?
Well, the busy bandwagon is kind of this societal pressure, the idea that being busy equals being important.
Right.
And so we fall into this trap feeling like we have to say yes to everything to prove our worth.
It's almost like busyness has become a status symbol, right?
Absolutely. And that leads us straight to the infinity pools.
Okay.
These are things like social media news feeds, streaming services.
Right.
They're designed to keep you hooked,
They are.
endlessly scrolling or watching.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that the authors have a unique perspective because they help design some of these very infinity pools.
Yes,
Jake Knapp worked on Gmail and John Zeratsky on YouTube.
that's right. Having been on the inside, they understand how these systems capture our attention,
Right.
and now they offer us strategies to break free.
Okay, so how do we actually start making time?
Yeah.
It's not like hours magically appear in our day.
There's no magic involved. It's really about design.
Okay.
The core of Make Time is choosing your daily highlight. This is the activity you want to prioritize above all else that day.
So that could be anything from finishing a crucial work project to spending quality time with family.
Absolutely. It could be something urgent, something personally satisfying, or even just something that brings you joy.
Right.
The point is, it's the one thing you'll feel good about accomplishing,
Okay.
even if everything else goes sideways.
I love that.
Yeah.
So once we have our highlight,
Yes.
how do we make it happen?
That's where laser focus comes in. It's about eliminating distractions and getting in the zone.
Okay.
Make Time offers a toolbox of tactics to help with this, and you can pick and choose what works best for you.
Okay, one tactic that really intrigued me was the distraction-free phone.
Mm-hmm.
Removing all those tempting apps. I can barely imagine my phone without them.
It sounds extreme,
Yeah.
but the impact can be profound. One of the authors replaced his home screen with just a beautiful photo.
Oh,
No more mindless scrolling, just a moment of peace each time he picks up his phone.
wow, that's powerful. So it's about shifting our phone from a distraction machine back to a tool.
Exactly. And there are other simple but effective tactics, like scheduling specific times to check email instead of constantly refreshing,
Okay,
turning off almost all notifications, even logging out of websites and apps to create friction.
I see. So it's about intentionally creating these little barriers to break those automatic habits.
Yes.
It's fascinating how these tiny nudges can have such a big impact. But isn't there a danger in completely disconnecting?
The authors aren't suggesting we become Luddites.
Yeah.
It's not about ditching technology entirely,
Right.
but choosing how and when we use it. It's about being in control, making sure technology serves our goals,
Right.
not the other way around.
Okay, so we've got our highlight and we're in laser focus mode.
Okay.
What's the next step?
Well, to have real focus, you need energy.
Right.
And that's where the authors draw inspiration from our caveman ancestors
Okay.
to make a point about how our bodies were designed to move.
That's where it gets really interesting. Tell me more.
Okay, well, we may be living in a modern world,
Right.
but we're still essentially cavemen at our core. We're wired for regular movement, real food, natural sleep cycles,
Right.
and strong social connections.
But let's be honest, our modern lives don't always support that.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting at desks, snacking on processed foods, staying up late,
Yes.
and scrolling through social media instead of having real conversations.
You hit the nail on the head. That's why the book stresses tactics like incorporating exercise into our routine,
Okay.
eating more whole foods, prioritizing quality sleep, and making time for face-to-face interactions.
It sounds like a complete lifestyle overhaul.
Ah.
How did they suggest we fit all of this into our already busy lives?
Well, they offer simple practical tips,
Okay.
like incorporating the 7-minute workout into your day, filling half your plate with veggies before adding other foods.
Okay.
They call that Central Park your plate,
Okay.
and even suggest a unique caffeine ritual to avoid energy crashes.
A caffeine ritual, tell me more about that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always looking for ways to optimize my energy levels.
Well, the timing of your coffee actually matters. They
Wow.
suggest delaying that first cup until mid-morning,
Interesting.
between 9:30 and 10:30 a.m.
Okay.
to work with your natural cortisol rhythms and avoid those mid-morning slumps.
So it's not about becoming a health guru, but about recognizing the connection between our physical well-being
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to focus and make time for what matters.
Precisely. And speaking of connection, one aspect they emphasize is the importance of face-to-face interaction,
Yes.
something our caveman ancestors had in abundance.
Think about it. Our ancestors spent hours in face-to-face conversations.
Yes.
Today, so much of our communication is mediated through screens.
And that shift has had a profound impact on our social well-being.
Yeah.
You know, the authors even suggest consciously choosing activities that promote face-to-face interaction,
Yeah.
like watching a movie with friends instead of binge-watching a show alone, to boost our mood and energy levels.
It's not about rejecting technology entirely, but finding a balance,
Yes.
incorporating these ancient wisdoms into our modern lives.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of how we spend our time and making choices that support our overall well-being.
Okay, so far we've got choosing a highlight, creating laser focus, and energizing ourselves.
Yay.
What's the final piece of the puzzle?
The last but certainly not least element is reflection. The authors emphasize the importance of regularly taking stock of what's working and what's not.
Okay.
They encourage a simple note-taking system to track your progress and make adjustments along the way.
So it's not a set it and forget it approach,
Yeah,
but rather an ongoing process of experimentation and refinement.
Exactly. They suggest asking yourself questions like, did I accomplish my highlight? Which tactics did I use? What worked well and what didn't?
Right.
This helps you tailor the system to your own unique needs and circumstances.
It sounds like applying the scientific method to your own life. So it's not about striving for perfect productivity all the time, but finding what works for you and creating a system that is sustainable over the long term.
That's the beauty of this framework. It's not a rigid set of rules, but a flexible approach that you can personalize to fit your life. And that brings us to another important point. The authors emphasize that it's not about being perfectly productive all the time.
What do they suggest instead?
They advocate for a mindset shift from as fast as possible to as slow as you can get away with.
That's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
It seems to fly in the face of our always-on hyper-productive culture.
It does. Instead of always trying to cram more in, it encourages us to slow down, be more intentional with our time, and make space for the things that bring us joy and satisfaction.
It sounds like a much more fulfilling and sustainable way to live.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding what truly matters to you and designing your days around those priorities.
We've covered the four main elements of the Make Time system.
Yes.
Highlight, laser energize, and reflect.
Yes.
But I have a feeling those are just the tip of the iceberg.
You're right. There's a lot more to unpack. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into those specific tactics
Okay.
and share our personal experiences with implementing them.
Okay.
We'll explore everything from setting boundaries with technology to optimizing your sleep to finding your tribe.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into Make Time in the next part. All right, let's roll up our sleeves and get into some of the Make Time tactics that can help us put these principles into action in our daily lives. When I first started reading the book, I was a little overwhelmed by all the different tactics. They have like 87 of them.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin?
I can see how that could be daunting. This is like a buffet of options, but you don't have to eat everything at once.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can't do everything at once.
Yeah.
So how do we choose?
The key is to start with the ones that resonate with you the most
Okay.
and experiment. See what works best for your individual needs and circumstances.
Okay.
It's about creating your own personalized recipe for making time.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So what are some of the tactics that have worked for you personally?
One that's been a game changer for me is scheduling specific times for email.
Okay.
I only check it twice a day, now once in the late morning and once in the late afternoon.
Wow, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to get to the point where I'm not constantly refreshing my inbox, but I can see how constantly checking and responding can completely derail your focus.
Yeah, it's like you're always at the mercy of other people's priorities, isn't it? Scheduling email time allows me to protect my mornings for my most important work, and I'm not constantly interrupting my flow to deal with messages.
Okay.
It's about reclaiming control of your attention.
It's almost like setting boundaries with your inbox. It's not about being rude or ignoring people. It's about being intentional with your time and energy. But doesn't it make people upset when they don't get an immediate response?
Interestingly, I've found that people have actually become more respectful of my time since I implemented this. When you're not constantly available, people start to value your time more.
That's a really good point. It's like you're signaling that your time is precious and should be respected. I've also been experimenting with turning off almost all notifications on my phone. Those little pings and buzzes can be so distracting.
I couldn't agree more. It's like they're designed to hijack our attention. What's been your experience with that?
It's been liberating. I used to have notifications for everything, but now I've pared it down to just the essentials. It's amazing how much mental space it frees up when you're not constantly being pulled out of your work by those little red dots of doom.
The red dots of doom. I love that. It's so true. They can feel so urgent, but the world doesn't end if you don't respond to a text message immediately.
Exactly. It's about regaining a sense of control over our technology instead of letting it control us. It's about choosing when and how we engage with it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of control, another tactic that caught my attention was inconveniencing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that one?
It sounds a bit counterintuitive at first, doesn't it?
Why?
Why would we want to make things harder for ourselves?
But the authors are getting at something deeper here. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, the idea is that our modern lives have become so convenient that we've lost touch with our natural instinct to move. We're always looking for the easiest, fastest way to do things, but that often comes at the expense of our physical health and energy levels.
So how do they suggest we inconvenience ourselves in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Do we have to start running marathons or something?
No, it doesn't have to be anything extreme. It can be as simple as taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking, or biking to work instead of driving, or even just standing up and stretching every hour.
Okay.
These are things you can easily incorporate into your daily routine.
I like that these are small, manageable changes, but they tie back to that idea of being more like our caveman ancestors who were constantly moving.
Yes.
And I imagine all that movement kept their bodies and minds sharp. Speaking of energy, what are your thoughts on the wake up before you caffeinate ritual?
Oh, that's an interesting one. You know, the timing of our coffee intake can have a significant impact on our energy levels. Delaying that first cup can actually help avoid those mid-morning energy crashes.
Explain the science behind that. I'm fascinated by the idea of hacking our natural energy rhythms.
Well, it's all about cortisol, a hormone that naturally boosts our energy levels in the morning. When you drink coffee first thing, you're overriding that natural energy boost. Then later, when your cortisol levels naturally dip, you're more likely to experience a crash.
I see. So we're working against our natural rhythms.
Right. By delaying that first cup until mid-morning, sometime between 9:30 and 10:30 a.m., you're allowing your cortisol to do its thing, and then you can use caffeine to supplement your energy levels when they naturally start to decline.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about giving up coffee entirely. It's about being strategic with it. Have you tried this in your own life?
I have, and it's made a noticeable difference. I used to have a cup of coffee as soon as I woke up, and I'd always hit that mid-morning slump. Now I feel more sustained energy throughout the morning. It's definitely worth experimenting with.
I'm definitely adding that to my list of tactics to try. So far, we've talked about scheduling email time, turning off notifications, inconveniencing ourselves, and delaying that first cup of coffee. It's amazing how these small tweaks can potentially have a ripple effect on our productivity and well-being. Any other tactics that you think are particularly powerful?
One that's been resonating with me lately is the importance of finding your tribe.
Okay.
The people we surround ourselves with have a huge impact on our energy levels, our mindset, and even our success.
It's like the old saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. Even for introverts like myself, connection is crucial. It's about finding those people who energize and inspire you, who challenge you to grow, and who support your goals and values. Those people who make you feel truly alive. Spending time with them can be a powerful way to recharge your energy and stay motivated.
It's about being intentional about the company we keep and making sure we're surrounding ourselves with people who lift us up and support our journey. We've covered a lot of great tactics, but I think it's important to remind our listeners that it's not about trying to do everything at once.
You're absolutely right. Start small, experiment, and find what works for you. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. This isn't about adding more pressure or striving for some unattainable level of perfection.
It's about making small changes that can have a big impact on your time, your energy, and your ability to focus on what matters most. And ultimately, it's about enjoying the journey.
Exactly. Making time for the things that matter should be an act of self-care, not a chore.
So as you listen to this, we invite you to reflect. What stands out to you? What are some small changes you can make today to start reclaiming your time and energy? Perhaps it's scheduling 15 minutes to work on a personal project, or delaying that first cup of coffee, or maybe it's turning off your notifications for a few hours.
It's about taking those small steps and experimenting to see what works best for you. Remember, you are in control. You have the power to design your days and make time for the things that truly matter.
As we've been exploring all these make time tactics, I've been thinking about my own journey with productivity and time management.
Yeah.
I used to be obsessed with finding that perfect system,
hmm
the one that just magically transforms you into a productivity ninja overnight.
I think we've all been down that rabbit hole at some point,
Oh, yeah.
searching for the holy grail of productivity.
I've tried every app, every method, every time blocking technique under the sun.
Right.
But you know what I've realized? There's no magic bullet.
That's such an important realization. It's not about the system itself, but the underlying principles.
And make time
hmm
really highlights that. It's not about rigidly following a set of rules.
Right. It's about understanding the core principles and then adapting them to fit your unique needs and circumstances, like we were talking about earlier with those personalized recipes.
Exactly. And being open to experimenting, trying different things, seeing what works for you. Because what works for one person might not work for another.
Yes.
And what works for you today might need to be tweaked tomorrow.
It's a process of ongoing evolution and refinement.
And that's okay.
Yes.
It takes the pressure off, doesn't it? Knowing that it's not about being perfect, but about finding what works for you.
Absolutely. It's about progress, not perfection. It's about creating a life that feels fulfilling and intentional, where you have the time and energy for the things that truly matter.
And that's a goal worth striving for, no matter how busy our lives may seem.
It's a reminder that we have more control than we often realize.
We have the power to design our days, to set our priorities, to make time for what we love.
And that is a truly empowering message.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Make Time, what's one final takeaway you'd like to leave our listener with?
I would say this: be kind to yourself. Making time for what matters is a journey, not a destination. Remember, it's about progress, not perfection. You don't have to do everything at once. Start small, experiment, and find what works for you. And most importantly, have fun with it. Making time should be about creating a life you love, not adding more stress to your plate.
So what small change could you make today to start making time for what truly matters? Maybe it's scheduling 15 minutes to work on a personal project, or delaying that first cup of coffee, or simply turning off your notifications for a few hours.
It's about those small shifts in perspective and action that can lead to big changes over time. It's about reclaiming even a small sliver of your time and attention, to be more present, more focused, and more intentional with how you spend your precious hours.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Make Time.
Yes.
We hope you found these insights valuable and inspiring.
And remember, you have the power to make time for what matters most. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep making time for what lights you up.